They dazzled audiences on the silver screen, suave, fearless, larger than life. But when the world was on fire and real danger loomed, these golden age icons didn't hide behind scripts or makeup. They suited up, marched out, and risked everything. While the spotlight chased them at home, some of Hollywood's most beloved legends were thousands of miles away, dodging bullets, flying bombing raids, and staring down the true face of war. And yet, you almost never hear about it. Why? Because these weren't publicity stunts. These weren't flashy photo ops. These were real-life sacrifices made by men who didn't think twice about pausing their careers, even at the height of fame, to serve a country in crisis. They left the glitter and glamour behind, knowing they might never return. Today, we're peeling back the curtain on a side of Hollywood that rarely gets the spotlight. A side where medals replaced Oscars, and battle scars left a deeper mark than any role ever could. You'll hear about the Hollywood heartthrob who flew combat missions over Nazi Germany, the child star who crash-landed behind enemy lines, and the silver screen king who enlisted after his wife's tragic death. These aren't tales crafted in a writer's room. They're gritty, raw, and real. And Hollywood? Well, they'd rather you forget these chapters ever existed. But we didn't. Because what happened next in their stories will change the way you see them forever. Long before Tom Cruise strapped into a fighter jet for the cameras, James Stewart was doing the real thing, and not for a movie. At the height of his career, with hits like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and the Philadelphia Story under his belt, Stewart had the world at his feet. He had just won an Oscar. He was Hollywood royalty. But none of that mattered when duty called. In 1941, Stewart became the first major American movie star to enlist in World War II, before the U.S. was even fully involved. At first, the military was hesitant to send him into combat. He was too valuable as a symbol, they thought. Too famous. But Stewart wasn't having it. He pushed to be treated like any other recruit. He wanted to serve for real, and he did. He became a bomber pilot in the U.S. Army Air Forces, flying dangerous missions over Germany. By the end of the war, he had flown 20 combat missions, rising to the rank of colonel. His men respected him not for who he was in Hollywood, but for how he handled the skies. Quiet, focused, brave under fire. What makes Stewart's story even more remarkable is how little he spoke of it afterward. No press tours, no film roles cashing in on his service. He tucked away his medals and went back to work like nothing had happened. But he never really left the war behind. Not entirely. They called him the King of Hollywood, and for good reason. By the early 1940s, Clark Gable was at the peak of his fame, fresh off his iconic role as Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind. He was dashing, beloved, and seemingly untouchable. But when a tragedy struck at home, everything changed. In 1942, Gable's world came crashing down when his wife, actress Carole Lombard, died in a plane crash while returning from a war bond tour. Her death shattered him. In the grief-stricken months that followed, Gable made a decision that stunned Hollywood. He enlisted in the Army Air Forces at age 41. This wasn't a publicity stunt. Gable trained hard and insisted on flying real combat missions. Assigned to the 351st Bomb Group, he flew over Nazi-occupied Europe as a gunner and observer on B-17 bombers. During one mission over Germany, his aircraft took heavy flak, nearly costing him his life. A piece of shrapnel even clipped his boot. The Nazis were reportedly aware of Gable's presence in the air. Hitler supposedly offered a reward to anyone who could capture him alive. A bizarre twist of fate for a man once idolized on screen. After the war, Gable returned to acting, but something had changed. His carefree screen persona now carried a weight, a weariness. He rarely spoke about his service or the loss that drove him to enlist. But one thing was clear: the King of Hollywood had traded his crown for courage and never looked back. Henry Fonda wasn't the kind of star who basked in spotlight. Even in his biggest roles, from The Grapes of Wrath to Young Mr. Lincoln, he brought a quiet strength and earnestness that audiences trusted. But when World War II broke out, Fonda couldn't just play a hero on screen. He needed to become one. At 37, Fonda had a thriving career and 3 children. Still, he enlisted in the Navy in 1942, driven by a deep sense of duty and morality. "I don't want to be in a fake war in a studio," he once said. "I don't think I could carry the guilt of not going." Assigned as a quartermaster 3rd class, Fonda didn't ask for special treatment. He served on the USS Satterley, a destroyer escorting Allied ships across the treacherous Atlantic. Later, he worked in air combat intelligence, helping to plan missions in the Pacific Theater. His service was quiet but vital, and it earned him a Bronze Star for meritorious action. Fonda rarely spoke about the war. When he returned to Hollywood, he slipped back into roles with a new edge, more grounded, more human. His characters after the war had a weight to them, a realism that mirrored his own transformation. He never glorified his service. In fact, he often downplayed it. But those who knew him said it changed him, deepened him. For Fonda, war wasn't a chapter in his life. It was a reminder that integrity mattered, even when no one was watching. Charles Durning's path to Hollywood stardom is marked by an incredible transformation, from soldier to acclaimed actor. Before he became one of Hollywood's most respected character actors, Durning served in some of the most dangerous combat situations during World War II, where he earned numerous military honors, including the Silver Star. Durning's story began in 1943, when, at the age of 19, he was drafted into the U.S. Army. During the Normandy invasion on D-Day, he was part of the landing at Omaha Beach, one of the most brutal and infamous battles of the war. He was wounded multiple times but survived, and his heroism on the front lines earned him the Silver Star for bravery. Durning also witnessed the horrors of the war, including the liberation of a Nazi concentration camp, an experience that would haunt him for the rest of his life. After the war, Durning transitioned to acting, using his intense experiences as the foundation for his performances. He brought an authenticity to his roles, often portraying tough, no-nonsense characters. His performances in films like Dog Day Afternoon, The Sting, and Tootsie earned him widespread acclaim and a career that spanned decades. Durning's service in World War II was an essential part of his identity, and it shaped the depth and intensity he brought to the silver screen. His legacy as both a soldier and actor is one that endures, a testament to the bravery and resilience of the generation that fought in the war. Lee Marvin was more than just a tough guy on screen. He was a true war hero whose military service played a pivotal role in shaping his remarkable career. Known for his gritty, commanding presence in films like The Dirty Dozen and Cat Ballou, Marvin's journey to stardom began on the battlefields of World War II, where he fought as a U.S. Marine. Marvin enlisted in 1942, just as the U.S. was gearing up for its entry into the war. He was sent to the Pacific Theater, where he participated in some of the most brutal fighting, including the Battle of Saipan. During one of these intense confrontations, Marvin was seriously wounded, receiving a gunshot wound to the chest that almost ended his life. His injury left him with permanent scars, both physically and emotionally, but it also instilled a deep resilience and toughness that would later define his iconic characters. After the war, Marvin's raw, rugged demeanor made him a natural fit for Hollywood, where he transitioned from character roles to leading man status. His portrayal of anti-heroes and soldiers with complex backstories resonated with audiences, particularly in the 1960s, when his war experience added an undeniable authenticity to his performances. Lee Marvin's legacy as both a war hero and a Hollywood legend stands as a testament to the deep connection between the experiences of war and the portrayals of soldiers in the movies that followed. Before he became a smoldering Hollywood icon with piercing blue eyes and commanding charisma, Burt Lancaster had already lived a full life, as a circus acrobat and then as a soldier. When World War II broke out, Lancaster didn't hesitate to serve. He joined the U.S. Army in 1942 and was assigned to the Special Services Division in North Africa and Italy, where his job was to entertain troops. But this wasn't just singing and dancing. He was deep in war zones, providing a morale boost in some of the harshest conditions. Unlike many actors who found fame and then served, Lancaster's career didn't take off until after the war. His performances always carried a physical intensity and inner grit that seemed rooted in something real. That real came from his war experience, his discipline, his endurance, and his refusal to be typecast. Films like From Here to Eternity and Elmer Gantry weren't just Oscar bait. They were driven by the gravity of someone who had stared down war and come back stronger. Though not a combat soldier, Lancaster's contributions were far from cushy. He risked his life to bring comfort and joy to troops in dangerous territory, and when he returned home, he used his fame to advocate for civil rights and social causes, becoming one of the most principled stars of his era. Burt Lancaster's war might not have been on the front lines, but his impact was undeniable, and his post-war legacy remains just as fierce. Charles Bronson didn't say much, on screen or off, but behind his quiet demeanor was a man forged in the fire of real war. Before he became Hollywood's ultimate tough guy in films like The Magnificent Seven and Death Wish, Bronson was flying bombing missions over Japan in AB-29 as part of the Army Air Forces. Born Charles Buczynski to a poor coal mining family, Bronson enlisted in 1943 and served as an aerial gunner. His job was one of the most dangerous in the military, manning machine guns in the freezing, exposed turret of a bomber, fending off enemy aircraft while flying at high altitudes for hours. He flew 25 combat missions, which earned him a Purple Heart after being wounded in action. Bronson's war experience wasn't something he bragged about. In fact, he rarely discussed it at all. But those who worked with him knew that his steely silence and stone-faced expressions weren't just acting choices. They were rooted in the psychological weight of a man who had seen too much too young. When he returned home, Bronson studied acting on the GI Bill and slowly climbed his way up the Hollywood ladder. His no-nonsense presence and emotionally restrained performances made him a standout in a town full of talkers. While many actors played soldiers, Bronson had been one, and it showed. He didn't need to raise his voice. His calm intensity told you everything you needed to know. He'd already fought his war. Hollywood may polish its stars until they shine, but behind that glitter, some carried the weight of real war. These weren't just actors playing heroes, they were heroes, long before the cameras rolled. From sky battles to ground combat, they faced life-and-death moments that shaped the legends we see on screen today. So the next time you watch one of their films, remember, the grit wasn't just good acting, it was earned. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this dive into hidden Hollywood history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and see you in the next video.